It's 60 minutes of financial planning. The WBBM Noon Business Hour continues.
That proposed merger between Time Warner Cable and Comcast is still being reviewed by the Department of Justice. It would be a $45 billion deal. Comcast shares are down fractionally. Time Warner shares are up fractionally today. Let's talk about the status of this thing and its implications. We're joined by Tim Hanlon, founder and CEO of the media consultancy firm Vertere Group here in Chicago. Tim, welcome back to the Noon Business Hour.
Hey, guys.
Where's this deal sitting right now?
Well, I think the movement right now, the winds seem to be sort of favoring against this merger from happening, or at least certainly as originally constructed. The normal course of process has seemingly started and stopped, but you have basically two regulatory bodies in Washington, the FCC, Federal Communications Commission, and the Department of Justice, which tends to look at things more on a competition-oriented basis, both seriously questioning various aspects of this deal for different reasons. And I think right now the thinking is that there are more questions than there are solutions right now, and a lot of speculation about as to if indeed it goes through, what happens in terms of conditions, or if it goes through at all.
Well, in terms of competition, my understanding is that really most of the Comcast territory and the Time Warner territories just simply do not overlap, that they cover different regions.
Well, in essence, what started out as a classic sort of cable television merger of two non-competitive geographies, as you outlined, I think that's where Comcast and Time Warner Cable are trying to keep the focus is sort of that sort of non-competitiveness and aggregation of just a more efficient scale of audience for cable television. But what's really happened in the course of the 14 months now since the announcement of that deal is it's become a much bigger, almost policy-oriented issue, almost a referendum on a whole bunch of other issues, such as how programming gets from studios and stations to your TV set, how consumers can access the Internet, the utility thereof, broadband being regulated or approached as a utility, not as just a plain old subscription service. And frankly, just the overall, and we've talked about this before, the overall amount of change about how television is changing and morphing into much more video, if you will.
Yeah, are there organized consumer groups who are lobbying one way or the other?
Yeah, I mean, I think depending on your anti-competitive bent, absolutely. On the high-speed broadband front, more than 50% of the U.S. market would be controlled by this combined entity. So you have a number of consumer groups who are trying to keep the Internet more as a regulated and almost a divine right, if you will, for consumers. I think you have a lot of programmers, TV programmers in particular, who are chafing at the scale that such a merger would bring and the undue influence it would have on programming decisions and the pricing of such. The most specific example of that, I think, is in what they call the regional sports networks space. That would be the Comcast sports nets of the world, where a disproportionate amount of local sports teams and their TV programming are controlled by now a more combined entity that has a lot more power and sway over how to charge for that sporting programming, as well as dividing who gets it and when and how.
We're seeing mergers in so many huge industries, the medical, pharmaceutical companies, and airlines. Is this industry apart from the others in some way?
I think what's happened, Chris, is that, as I said earlier, you have what is originally envisioned as a merger that brings more scale and efficiencies to the television industry, the cable television services business, which effectively has morphed into something much bigger. The reality is that it's not just a cable television services play anymore. It's much more of a holistic, if you will, interactive pipe of content, of telephone service even, of video, of broadband connectivity. It has truly become more of and this is where a lot of regulatory folks get interested, almost like a utility, to the point where the Obama administration has actually specifically gone out and said, we are choosing now going forward to regulate this as a utility, as a sort of a right, if you will, for consumers to have unfettered access to.
Which is what the FCC's net neutrality ruling was all about. Exactly, Tim. Thanks for being with us today. Tim Hanlon, founder, CEO of the media consultancy firm Vertere Group here in Chicago.